Hello there, and welcome to The Roast. My name is Alex, and you are on the Classic Cars Roast channel. All right, let's pull the covers off a controversial one. 1961 Chrysler Imperial. Picture this. A massive hunk of American metal rolling down the street, fins that could cut through the air, and a chrome front end that screams for attention. But don't let that shiny exterior fool you, folks. This car is a perfect example of the decline that started creeping in after 1970, which was the last great year for high-compression V8s, and trust me, it shows. Now, let's talk numbers. This beauty was supposed to be powered by a RB361 engine with a displacement of 413 cubic inches, cranking out a gross 350 horsepower. Sounds good, right? Well, let me hit you with this. By the time you hit the road, it's like driving a refrigerator. The power is barely there, and while it sounds impressive on paper, it's a far cry from the roaring beasts of the late 50s. You get a torque rating of 470 pound-feet, but with a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of around 9.8 seconds, you might as well be waiting for your coffee to brew. Now, let's discuss the market. The big iron market is really heating up, and this is where the Chrysler Imperial finds itself. Auction prices for these cars can be absurd. Think about it. A high-quality restoration can fetch between $40,000 to $75,000, and that's for a car that might have spent most of its life languishing in a garage. We're talking about models with ridiculously low mileage, sometimes as low as 3,900 miles. It's like people are trading in their old sofas for these things. What catches my eye, and I hope it catches yours too, is the unapologetic character that this car brings to the table. Sure, it has that brutal charm we all love, but it's also a product of a time when Chrysler was trying to play catch-up with the competition. The floating side mirrors and unique wraparound bumpers are stylish, but the build quality? Pretty dreadful. You can expect common rust spots in the trunk floor and lower fenders, and let's not even get started on the complicated wiring harness that's prone to shorts. So, what's the takeaway here? The Chrysler Imperial is a classic piece of American automotive history, but it's wrapped in a package that's more about nostalgia than performance. If you can find one that's original and in good shape, it might be worth your time. But, for me, a repainted body is an immediate no. Game over. What do you think? Would you take a gamble on this big chunk of nostalgia, or is it just too much of a risk? Here we are, diving into the creation story of the 1961 Chrysler Imperial, a car that sits smack in the middle of the malaise era, a time when American automakers were truly losing their way. You've got to understand that the Imperial was once a pinnacle of luxury, but by the time this model rolled off the assembly line, the golden age of high-compression V8s had already slipped into the rearview mirror. 1970 was the last great year for horsepower, and by the time you get to this car, you're looking at a sad 7.6 to 1 compression ratio. That's right, folks. The days of real power were fading fast, and what do we get instead? A pathetic 190 horsepower, which frankly is more embarrassing than impressive. Now, Chrysler did try to make a statement with the design. The redesigned grille with those freestanding headlights and that inverted trapezoid shape. It's like they were attempting to bring back the elegance of the past while completely ignoring the fact that the competition was rolling out some serious iron. The heavy chrome bumpers and the pronounced fins, the stuff that once screamed luxury, now just feels like a desperate attempt to distract you from the lack of substance underneath. You can't help but notice the quirks, like the floating side mirror design. Seriously, what were they thinking? It's as if they wanted to be unique but ended up looking just plain odd. And while we're on the topic of oddities, those push-button transmission controls, talk about a gimmick that's more frustrating than functional, especially when you consider how prone the electrical systems are to shorts. So here's the kicker. Even with all its design flair, the mechanical weak points are glaring. Power window switches that fail, heating and cooling systems that are about as reliable as a politician's promise. This is the stuff that would make any potential owner reconsider. The Imperial was supposed to be a luxury flagship, but it was drowning in its own mediocrity. Now, let's not forget the market value. High-quality restorations of this car can fetch a staggering price at auction, anywhere from $40,000 to $75,000. Why? because it's rare and has a brutal charm that collectors are starting to appreciate. But for me, this car is a reminder of what once was, before the malaise era took hold and left a trail of pathetic performance and lackluster engineering in its wake. Would I spend my money on this? Not a chance. When it comes to the exterior of the 1961 Chrysler Imperial, we need to talk about the aesthetic choices that, in my opinion, are a mixed bag at best. Now, don't get me wrong, the heavy chrome bumpers are a bold statement, and I can appreciate that. However, the unique wraparound styling? It's more of a gimmick than a game changer. The grille redesign with freestanding headlights looks like they were trying too hard to be edgy, but ended up just looking awkward. The inverted trapezoid shape is supposed to evoke luxury, but it just screams, "Look at me," in a way that feels forced. And those body lines? Well, they're about as pronounced as a whisper in a crowded room. The floating side mirror design is quirky, but let's be real, quirky doesn't always equate to good. It feels like a half-hearted attempt to stand out, and frankly, it's not working. The pronounced fins? They might have been a fashionable nod to the era of excess, but now they come off as a desperate plea for attention. It's like Chrysler was trying to channel their inner jet fighter, but all they managed was a clunky, confused look that misses the mark entirely. Now, color choices. Formal black, oyster white, embassy gold, and crown mauve. Seriously? It's almost like they were trying to evoke a sense of stately elegance but ended up with a palette that feels more like a funeral home than a luxury car. Sure, these tones might have appealed to some, but they lack the pizzazz you'd expect from a car trying to make a statement. I mean, where's the bold red or the vibrant blue that would turn heads? Instead, we get a lineup that feels like it's been frozen in time, not in a good way. Let's not forget the rust issues that plague this beauty. The trunk floor, spare tire well, and lower fenders are notorious for rotting out. And if you're lucky enough to find one with the vinyl roof, you better check under there for rust too. The build quality, let's be honest, is pretty dreadful. The panel gaps are often hidden behind comically thick door seals, making you wonder if they were trying to mask the poor craftsmanship. When you pop the hood, you want to be greeted by a work of art, not the aftermath of a half-baked assembly line. So, what's the takeaway here? The exterior of the 1961 Chrysler Imperial is a classic case of style over substance. It may have been a head-turner in its day, but today, it's just clunky and outdated. Personally, if I'm spending my hard-earned cash on a classic, I want something that commands respect, not something that feels like a relic of a bygone era. Would I buy it? Not a chance. The interior of the 1961 Chrysler Imperial is a fascinating blend of ambition and mediocrity, an ambitious attempt at luxury that falls a bit flat in execution. Now, the dashboard is where the real story begins. It boasts a full-width design that screams, "Look at me." But that's where the praise ends. You've got push-button transmission controls, an innovative feature for its time. But let's be honest, they can be more confusing than helpful. Ever tried to find the right button while you're merging onto a highway? Good luck with that. Plus, the absence of a center console is glaring. You've got this vast expanse of dashboard, yet the designers decided a large glove compartment and map pockets were all you needed. Really? Now let's talk about the steering wheel, available in two-tone designs with an optional tilt function. But let's be clear, it feels more like a relic than a luxury feature. The steering wheel's design has a certain dated charm, but if you're looking for a comfortable grip, you might be left wanting. The seats, however, can be a mixed bag. Optional leather upholstery is nice, but power-adjustable front seats? They sound great until you realize the power window switches and motors often fail. So, good luck trying to adjust your seat when you can't even get your windows to work. And what about the smell? You'd expect a car of this caliber to have that sweet aroma of luxury, but instead, you might catch a whiff of mildew from the notorious rust spots lurking under the vinyl roof or in the trunk floor. It's like the car is trying to remind you of its age, and trust me, it's not a pleasant reminder. The comfort level? It's decent for a car of its era, but when you compare it to the cushy rides of its contemporaries, it's pretty dreadful. Sure, it has that brutal charm that some collectors drool over, but if you're planning on taking a long road trip, I'd think twice. So, what do you think? Is this interior a comfortable oasis or a cramped, rusty nightmare? For me, The lack of a cohesive design and the unreliable features are serious deal breakers. If you find one in good condition, maybe it's worth considering, but be prepared for the reality that it might not be the luxurious experience you're hoping for. Would you really want to spend your time in a car that feels like a ticking time bomb of electrical issues? All right, gearheads, let's get into the meat of the matter, the engine. When you look under the hood of the 1961 Chrysler Imperial, you're greeted by the RB361 engine code, a true heavyweight at 413 cubic inches. Now, before you get too excited, hold your horses because this is where the story takes a nosedive. This engine, despite its impressive displacement, only churns out a gross horsepower of 350. Yes, you heard that right. 350 horsepower from an engine that's nearly half a liter larger than a small block Chevy. You'd expect it to rip the pavement, but no, it's more of a gentle giant than a raging bull. Now let's talk torque, which is a respectable 470 pound-feet. That might sound decent, but when you're dragging around a car that weighs as much as a small house, it's just not enough to make you feel like you're driving something special. You put your foot down expecting to feel the power surging through, but all you get is a lethargic push. This is classic malaise-era nonsense, where the thrill of driving was sucked right out of the equation. Remember, this is the same era when muscle cars were starting to take shape, and here we are with a big, lazy engine that can barely muster the enthusiasm to get you from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 9.8 seconds. That's right, folks, 9.8 seconds. You'd be better off strolling to your destination. And the quarter-mile time? A pathetic 17.6 seconds. This isn't just slow, it's downright embarrassing. What's even more frustrating is that you have an engine with such potential just wasting away. Chrysler had the chance to make a statement, but instead, they delivered a car that's more about cruising than about performance. And don't even get me started on the transmission options. They slapped a 3-speed automatic torque flight transmission onto this behemoth, and while it's a decent unit, it's not going to make you forget about the Turbo Hydromatic 400. The Turbo Hydromatic 400 is the best automatic transmission ever built, and this is just a shadow trying to catch up. So here's the bottom line. If you're looking for something that screams power and performance, this isn't it. You might as well look for a nice recliner instead of this car if you want to kick back and relax. For me, the dismal horsepower and sluggish performance are game over. If you want something that will actually get your blood pumping, keep looking. The engine is where the real problems begin, and it's a hard pill to swallow when you realize just how much potential was wasted in this big iron. When you talk about the mechanics of the 1961 Chrysler Imperial, you can't ignore the transmission. The A727 torque flight might sound like just another automatic transmission, but this is where the real story begins. It's a 3-speed automatic that, let's be honest, is pretty much a legend in its own right, an undeniable titan of engineering. This bad boy is known for its durability and smooth operation, truly a testament to the glory days of American automotive design. You see, if you're going to put your money into a classic, you want something that won't leave you stranded on the side of the road like some pathetic Ford C6 or the flimsy THM 200. The Torque Flight is the best automatic transmission ever built, and I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. Now, let's shift gears to the rear axle. The standard ratio is 2.93 to 1, but there's a performance variation at 3.23 to 1 if you're feeling frisky. However, you'd better check if that's an actual option or just a dealer's tall tale, because the last thing you want is to be left with a car that can't hold its own on the highway. The rear axle ratios are decent, but honestly, they don't make up for the overall lack of excitement in the driving experience. So, what happens when you combine the Torque Flight with that rear axle? You get a rather lackluster performance. The acceleration from 0 to 60 miles per hour in approximately 9.8 seconds might have been respectable back in the day, but it's utterly pathetic by modern standards. The quarter-mile time of 17.6 seconds? Don't even get me started. You could probably walk faster than that. But it's not just about the numbers. What really gets me is how Chrysler decided to compromise on the overall feel of driving. Put simply, it used to be better. Cars from the mid-60s had a certain rawness, a connection to the road that you just don't get with the Imperial. Sure, it's big and luxurious, but that's all it really has going for it. It's like driving a couch on wheels. Comfortable, sure, but don't expect it to handle like a sports car. And let's not forget the mechanical weak points. The power window switches and motors were known for failing. How charming. It's almost as if Chrysler was inviting you to have a love-hate relationship with your car. The heating and cooling systems? Forget it. They were more unreliable than a bad first date. So, as you examine the mechanics of the 1961 Chrysler Imperial, remember this. While the torque flight might be a gem, the overall experience leaves much to be desired. Would I buy one? Not unless I had a serious soft spot for nostalgia and a willingness to deal with its flaws. Now, let's talk about the part of the 1961 Chrysler Imperial that really gets under my skin: the suspension, brakes, and handling. You know, when I think about the glory days of American cars, I think about the mid-60s when things were still decent. But then you get to the malaise era, and what do we have? A suspension system that feels like it was designed by a committee of blindfolded monkeys. The Imperial, with its grand title, should have had a handling experience that matched its luxurious aspirations. Instead, it's like driving a floating couch on a sea of marshmallows. The front suspension uses a torsion bar setup, which sounds fancy, but the reality is anything but. Sure, it was innovative at the time, but does it really hold up? The ride is soft and wallowy, which makes you feel like you're floating down the road instead of gripping it. And don't even get me started on the rear leaf springs. They might have been the go-to solution for big cars back in the day, but they lack the sophistication you'd expect from a luxury model like this. It's like they took the easy route instead of engineering something that could actually handle a corner without feeling like it's going to roll over. And then we get to the brakes. My biggest issue? They're absolutely pathetic. With a car this size, you'd think they'd have massive stopping power, but no. The drum brakes are a joke. Sure, they may have been standard in the early 60s, but come on. A luxury car should have better than this. You press the pedal, and you're left praying to the automotive gods that you actually stop before hitting something. The lack of modern disc brakes is a glaring oversight, and it really makes you question the design choices made by Chrysler. It's almost as if they thought, who needs stopping power in a luxury car? Now handling? Forget about it. The steering feels vague, and there's zero feedback. You turn the wheel, and it's like the car says, sure, I'll get around to it eventually. Compare this to the mid-60s models, which handled much, much better, and you realize how far Chrysler fell from grace. It's almost tragic. So if you're thinking about buying one of these, remember, if you want a car that handles like a dream, steer clear of this floating disaster. For me, a car that can't handle is an immediate deal breaker. I wouldn't spend my hard-earned money on something that drives like a barge. What about you? Would you take the risk? Now, let's dig into the reliability of the 1961 Chrysler Imperial. First off, you better brace yourself for the reality check. This beast is not exactly known for its dependability. The complicated wiring harness is notorious for shorts, making you wonder if Chrysler had a bet running on how many electrical issues they could pack into one car. Power window switches? Forget about it. They're about as reliable as a politician's promise. To top it all off, the heating and cooling systems are as fickle as a cat on a hot tin roof. You might as well plan on rolling down the windows in summer and freezing in winter because those systems are likely to leave you hanging. And if you think you can escape rust, think again. The trunk floor and spare tire well are hot spots for corrosion, while lower fenders and doors seem to be a buffet for rust. If it has a vinyl roof, you better check under there, as that's where rust often makes its grand entrance. It's like a ticking time bomb of decay, waiting to surprise the next unsuspecting owner. So what's the verdict? This car is a mixed bag for sure. It's got that brutal charm and unapologetic character that makes you want to love it. But you have to be ready to deal with its shortcomings. Is it worth the hype? If you find a well-preserved model, then maybe, just maybe, it's worth considering. Remember, it's only original once. An untouched model with low mileage could be a gem. But if you stumble upon a rust bucket or one with electrical gremlins, just walk away. In conclusion, the 1961 Chrysler Imperial embodies a time when American luxury was at its peak, yet it's also a reminder of the decline that followed. Surprising auction prices, sometimes reaching as high as $75,000, may tempt the unknowing. But know this: Owning one of these cars means embracing its flaws and quirks. If you find one in good condition for a reasonable price, it might just be worth pulling the trigger. But if you're not ready for a love-hate relationship filled with electrical nightmares and rust repairs, I'd think twice. So, would you spend your money on this? If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give it a like. Leave your comments and impressions. Your opinion is very important to me. Until next time.